All right, guys, welcome back. I'm excited to share a little bit today about stress, cortisol, and connected to food. We're in a little bit of a series here on stress and nourishing our body with food and how it all kind of interplays together. We could talk about this probably for days and days, but as I've shared in a couple of the other episodes, that one of the things that I discovered on my journey was that part of my health issues were arising from stress that I didn't really understand. And that's why I'm a huge advocate for building resilience to stress, for not only not the elimination of stress, because stress actually is good for us in small doses and with the amount of recovery and healing that we need properly in our lifestyles and our diets. So what happened though in my journey was that I was uncovering these things about, physical stress on the body, emotional stressors, past traumas and wounds that were causing stress in my system. And then I came along this concept called biological stress. And that has to do with the types of things that go into your system. So there's also environmental toxins and stressors that get put on our system. And a lot of different pieces play into that puzzle, which again calls out to us that we are whole human beings. We can't just isolate one factor and try to change our food and nutrition and expect that's the only thing that will play a part in our journey towards healing and resilience. So I want to talk today a little bit about the role that stress and cortisol, how they play a role in causing our body to actually use food differently. Now, this one is super fun. Oftentimes we think of the concept of being a stress eater and eating when we're under stress or eating because of stress, because it really gives us that boost of maybe dopamine or serotonin or other components that you need while you're under stress in order to handle it. But when our levels get spiked over and over again and kind of remain in that high state, it no longer serves us anymore to keep doing that. And what begins to happen is that our body actually can't break down the food that we're putting into it. So this actually becomes a synergistic relationship, is the stress, the eating, and the inability to digest the nutrients that we actually need in order to combat the stress. So if you remember the last couple episodes, we've talked about how nutrients can actually help us deal with stress and recover quicker from stressors in our life. But when we have this kind of ongoing stress going in our system and our cortisol levels are flowing freely, let's just say it that way, because why I say it a little bit differently rather than cortisol spiked is because you can actually measure sometimes our cortisol levels not showing as high as we would think they would be, but just simply having it flowing through our system does quite a number on our system. So some little things that cortisol does to our system, they're not little, they're very big, but here are a couple of items that you want to be thinking about is happening to your body when cortisol is running high, when we've got stress levels that have been running high for so long. And you might be one of those people that are listening to this and thinking, I haven't really experienced a lot of high stressors, or you might be thinking, I feel like, things are going well right now in my life, and yet I still have these symptoms. And if that's the case, as you hear some of these, what might be happening is you've gotten so used to the feeling and sensation of kind of a higher level of stress that you don't notice that it's just ongoing anymore. And that has been the case with many people that I've met, is that they just have a high tolerance, or they've just become experienced with it, that they don't actually know what it feels like to rest and recover. Truly, on a true level. Maybe you lay down or you sleep long, but that's not true rest and recovery. We want our nervous system to actually wind down. We want our body to get into that heal and digest state. Okay, so here are some of those things. Our immune function. We're always talking about boosting our immunity, right? It's not really something that you can do, but you can actually lessen the capacity of your immune system to function well. And cortisol keeps inflammation in check in a certain way, but too much lowers your body's ability to fight off injections or infections. Sorry, we got injections going on as well. Infections and illness. So if you find yourself getting sick regularly, I would look at the broader level of stressors on your life. Now, that can happen from working out too much. It can happen from working too much. It can happen from, too many things going on at one time, maybe too many plates that you're spinning. It could be going on from past wounds, traumas, pains that are unhealed. It could be happening from a lack of sleep. A lack of sleep causes our cortisol levels to spike, causes our stress levels to rise, and we might have emotional or relational stressors going on. We might also have, like I was talking about today, biological stressors where we are just not eating and filling our body with nourishment and foods that are actually nourishing our body and strengthening our system. Here's another one that's really interesting that this goes hand in hand, is that our blood sugar levels tend to fluctuate majorly in the midst of high cortisol levels. So cortisol actually increases our blood sugar, which is great. It's necessary because it helps us actually respond to stress. But what that does is it actually leads to insulin resistance and more blood sugar issues over time. So if you kind of are noticing your blood sugar kind of seems out of whack, again, take a look at the stressors and look at how might be playing a role. Quick little story on that. Many years ago, I noticed it was like I just kept crashing, and not in your normal level, but I would get like kind of lightheaded, and it would be resolved when I would eat. But you can't eat all day long, and it wasn't until a couple of years later when I began learning some of this stuff that I realized what was really happening, that it was the stress in my system that wasn't allowing me to properly interact with the food that I was eating. And my blood sugar was high and I couldn't seem to get it under control. And that leads us to belly fat. Chronically elevated cortisol levels leads to weight gain across the board. That is well known, and that especially is stored in the visceral fat area in our midsection. That has a very different kind of fat, and it is very often deeply related to stress levels. Yes, we can fix that with nutrition, but we also really need to look at our stress levels. And again, that can be too much exercise. It can be past things. It can be present stressors, or it can also be I am not engaging regularly in relaxation and restoration and restorative practices that are helping my body to release the stress. So maybe you don't have a lot going on, but maybe your body is not actually able to release it. So that's something that's really important that we're going to look at in just a moment, of what are some of those things that you can do to actually release that stress from your system. Bloating and digestion is another one. Our gut is one of they call it the three brains interacting together: our mind brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain. And the reason they're called brains is because they actually have thousands of neurons operating inside of them. Now, our mind brain has millions of neurons, whereas our heart and our gut have thousands, but thousands is still a lot, and it has a mind of its own, so to speak. That's why you can say I have a gut feeling about that, I have a gut sense about that. But it responds deeply to stress. And a lot of our stress, they say, is held in our gut. And so that's where stress and food go hand in hand. If you're feeding it good, healthy things, it's going to help with your emotional levels, your thought processes. It's going to also help you deal with the stress. And conversely, having too much stress is going to block our capacity to digest nutrients. So this is something that happened to me. A quick story. I think stories are more helpful to relate to, right? So many years ago, when I was having my health problems, I had all my blood panels run by a functional doctor, and I was in a season of trying to repair and rebuild my system. So I was like, I'd cut out all sugar, all these different things, all the inflammatory foods, and was eating very nourishing, rich foods, very intentional, and I was very strict about it. And after running my blood panels, my functional doctor says, it looks like you're a malnourished kid. You know, you have these low levels of everything, and told her my situation. And she said, it's probably your body isn't able to digest them. And so I began deeply going down some of the practices of building resilience, but also allowing my body to heal. So that is just such a huge key is yes, they have to go together synergistically. We can't just try to feed it good nutrients without allowing our body to release and heal from the stress. And so for me, I was not in a stressful season then, but I had come out of a stressful season and my body had not healed from it yet. So it's really important to understand that, you know, a lot of what's happening in our body is not just purely related to one thing or another. It's very interconnected. Last but not least, you know, this is one of my hot topics, is just emotional health. That high cortisol levels and stress levels deeply contribute to anxiety, depression, even fears increasing abnormally, restlessness, apathy, and other pretty intense mood changes can happen when our cortisol levels are high. People have been known to just unplanned or unconnected crying and tears can happen, just your body releasing emotion. And kind of, I've had people say, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know why my tears are coming. I just cry easily. Or I get really cranky and irritable. And that can actually be connected to stress levels. Okay, so rounding out here, I want to finish off with a study that demonstrates this in connection, and then also bring in a couple of tools that you can use right away to begin helping your body to heal from stress so that it can digest the food, so that your body can heal, and so that you can get your energy and your life back. All right, so, you know, researchers are finding that stress actually causes us to block the nutrients from the food that we eat. Right, just like I explained with my own personal story. And this one was a really powerful study and understanding from the University of San Francisco, UC San Francisco. They actually studied how chronic stress affects the body, and they used women who were caretakers of their parents and suffering from a lot of stress in the process of doing that. And these women, they actually studied how their body reacted to different sugars and different foods, and how their bodies would increase in fat very quickly and very easily. And this group of women was over the age of 50, which is a common time anyways for women to begin gaining fat. But they started noticing that this group of women, they had actually metabolic changes happening within their system. Not just kind of like slow metabolism from age, but this was the kind of metabolic changes that actually lead to disease that the lower stressed women didn't have. And so this is really important, because when you are experiencing chronic stress, our tendency is to reach for those unhealthy foods. But then our body doesn't have the capacity to digest those foods. And that's where it gets really hard. And we start trying to diet, and dieting, you know, really cuts and messes with our metabolism. And so instead of nourishing our body and allowing it to build resilience to stress, recover and release it, we end up kind of butting heads within our own system. And so, you know, you want to really think about what are the different levels happening in my life. And so something that I like to do within my coaching is to look at the different areas of your life, and don't just look at them from the sense of, is this an area that I feel satisfied in, or I feel life and joy in, such as, okay, finances, career, family, relationships, joy, health, my home environment, putting all these different areas and others that you want to add in that are important to you. Look at, how connected you feel, how alive you feel in every area. But then the next step with that is to say, are any of these areas causing unneeded stress in my life? And is there any way in any of these areas that I need to interact with it differently? So I like to really switch things up a little in how we actually talk about it, because sometimes when I find people is that they go, oh, I need to eliminate that area, or I need to change it altogether, or I need to drastically do something in that area of my life. But really, stress comes from the way we interact with something. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just say that, if I think my job is stressful, and then I build up this stress inside of me before I even start my job. All these thoughts are producing all these emotions, which are producing chemicals. Then I go into my job and I'm almost looking for the type of stress that I'm expecting, and I'm creating more stress by the way that I relate to it. And so a large part, there's one part that is actually to do with our perception of it and how we interact with it. If my boss gives me more work, or my family member has something going on, or this is going on in my life, how I interact with it is going to change the entire game. And this is one of the reasons why I love using EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and making sure that I work through all those issues and creating not only a release from my body to release that stress, but EFT actually creates cognitive shifts in the way we perceive things. It actually changes our brain patterns and chemistry in the journey and process of doing that. So utilizing a tool such as EFT to release the stress and shift how you perceive it is going to be one major way of changing how you interact with it. Number two, changing your breathing patterns. So I know I talk a lot about breathing. This is a passion of mine because it can actually change the very chemistry of your body. And if you simply try this one practice, slow your breathing down in and out your nose. Your nasal passageway, breathing through your nose, is actually something that shifts you into your parasympathetic state. And getting it deep into your lungs activates spindles in your lungs, on the bottom of your lungs, activating the parasympathetic state. Now, the parasympathetic state is known for rest, heal, digest. So if you want your body to begin healing from all those stressors, right, laying down or sitting on the couch or doing nothing doesn't really help our body rejuvenate or heal. You can keep all that stress in your system for years without releasing it, without doing some of these self-care techniques, these powerful healing techniques on a regular basis. So what I like to do is say, do some EFT at the end of every day just to release all the stressors, anything that came up, and to shift your perspective and engagement with it. But practice breathing all throughout the day. Whenever you think of it, just shift and downshift your breathing. And a great practice is slow your breathing down and then do a couple of sighs. This deep sigh. Just 3 deep sighs. When you do the sigh, it's actually really important that your inhale is very long and extended. So if you can breathe it in and really release it, that sends a huge calming signal throughout your entire body. You also oxygenate all your cells, you open up your brain to be able to think clearly, and you send relaxation and healing through all the cells and systems of your body. And doing this as a fun bonus actually helps other people who hear you to do the same. They remember to breathe. Just like yawning is contagious, so is breathing. And so, guess what? If you have a stressful environment, give this a try and watch how people begin to shift and downshift their own stress levels. Really powerful. So, remember, in summary, our stress levels, our cortisol levels, really affect our body's capacity to digest food properly. So if you're noticing some of those symptoms and issues rising, look at your stress levels and then practice some unwinding and rejuvenating techniques such as EFT or breathing techniques to help unwind, and practice the sigh every now and then throughout the day. Here's a fun little fact. We breathe somewhere upwards of 20,000 breaths a day. If you could even shift 1% of that, that would be 200 downshifted breaths all throughout the day. Now that could be a few every hour. That would actually change the chemistry of your body and your capacity to deal with stress properly. Go ahead and give it a try, and then begin to notice how your body is able to digest food better and take in even the unhealthy foods that you have and respond differently to them. Love to hear from you. Go ahead and give it a try, and may you become more and more resilient to stress, healing in your body, and may you actually truly start to thrive. And I bless you for that. I'll see you in the next episodes.